Okay, here we are. This is March 3rd, 2014. I'm with Richard Arthur, one of the founders of UTLA and probably the best proven educator in the United States for a long time. Richard used to be a major administrator at LAUSD. He was asked by Marcus Foster. He was the first person killed in violence by the SLA with cyanide-tipped bullets, and they tried to assassinate Richard also twice, and luckily they failed. He then went on to found Whitney High School, one of the highest performing public high schools in the United States for the last 25 years. What we're going to be talking with Richard about today is the formation of UTLA, the Los Angeles United Teachers, and why and how it was founded and what the conditions were before, and what the union is really supposed to be about, because they've really lost their way. Okay, Richard, now that we've given you an introduction, I'd like you to start with, you started working at LA Unified someplace about 1952 or 53, about the same time as Dr. George McKenna, who's now running for former board member of District 1, Marguerite Lamott's seat, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so tell everybody what it was like when in that period of time, and the schools, and what schools you worked in, and the conditions and situations that led up to the formation of UTLA.
Okay, I worked in the South Central area, where schools were being overrun with violence.
You worked a lot in high schools, correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, give a few of the high schools you worked in. You worked at Washington Prep, right?
Washington Prep, Jefferson High, Jordan High. Those were the main ones.
The major ones in that area, right? Okay, so tell us what the conditions were like for the normal teacher at that time in that area.
At that time, things were tough.
Well, explain to us about, you were telling me earlier about all the gunfights and intimidation of teachers and threats and violence and everything else, right?
Yeah.
Tell us what was going on in the classrooms and the schools and how violent and crazy it really was.
Well, as you walked around, you could just see the violence. And an example of the violence was the wastebaskets were lit on fire, and which could have been very much more serious. All of them were potential fire makers. So my job was to try to work with the kids to keep them out of trouble.
And there was a lot of gunfights and such.
A lot of gunfights.
A lot of teachers getting beat up in the classrooms and every kind of thing, and nobody could learn or anything because you had a bunch of crazy people in the classrooms and nobody would help them, right?
Right.
So then you were telling me a part of the history in the sense that Wayne Johnson, this is probably before Wayne Johnson, right? When you went to him and asked to form the anti-gang thing?
Right, it was before him.
And that was before you wrote your book, Gangs in Schools, right?
Right.
Okay, so tell us about how this, and hold up your book so that they can see the book, Richard. There you go, a little bit higher, a little bit, right there. Richard wrote this book, and it's a very simple book on how you deal with gangs in schools, and if more people would read this simple book of how you simply do this, because Richard really worked it down, we'd have a whole lot less problems, wouldn't we?
A whole lot less.
Okay, so you go to the administration and say, we need some kind of a program, right? And what do you propose to them?
I propose to them that we lower the class sizes in the elementary schools.
Because everything comes into the high schools and junior highs from the elementary schools. This gets back to the old thing, if they're not at grade level by the third grade, you got problems, right? And what did the district do about that?
Well, they tried to help a little, but they didn't know how to go about it.
So then they finally came and asked you to set up a program?
Right.
Okay. And your old office in this program, as time went on, it ended up being the old boardroom at LA Unified before they made the new school, right?
It was the old boardroom.
So you were really in charge of a major anti-gang rehabilitation program at LA Unified, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, tell us about how UTLA got started. You were telling me that there's all the violence and everything, and then you came up with this idea. Tell the public about the idea.
Well, I had an idea that we could have a Miss LA teacher contest.
And tell them what Miss LA teacher contest would, what would they be having the contest for?
We would be choosing like same as any beauty contest. And we would be choosing the best people that could represent the teachers.
It wasn't about how pretty they were, it was about who was the best teacher, who had the best programs and such.
Right.
So it was a competition not for how cute you are, how good a teacher you are.
Yeah, how good a teacher you are and are you effective with the kinds of students you have. And many of them admitted that they weren't effective.
And did they say why?
Well, they said that the district wouldn't back them up.
It was just like what's going on. No backup.
Right,
Blame them. Don't blame the guys who hold the reins, right?
right.
So through this Miss Teacher LA contest, you said teachers started discussing all the problems and a dialogue finally started, right?
Right.
Now tell us how this evolved.
Well, it evolved through the Miss LA teacher contest. Because we had to go to every school to get a candidate for the contest. And that's what we got. We increased our teacher membership in running things. We wanted a say in running the schools and running programs so that they were effective.
Was this before or after or during Wayne Johnson's period of time?
Before.
Okay, so what was the administration's reaction to you at that time?
Very good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they saw the problem and they saw that this might be a reasonable answer, right?
Right.
Okay, so tell us how it progressed from there to where the teachers finally put themselves on the line and the reasons why they formed UTLA.
Yeah, they knew they needed an organization to fight.
And let's not forget there were 14 unions before this for a long time, right?
14 unions.
And for 7 years before UTLA, you were the only person allowed to negotiate for them, right?
For all of them.
So you were kind of a point person for a long time for all the teachers. Okay, so then
We pulled the unions together. And we formed one union, UTLA. And we chose officers for UTLA. And then we went to work.
So you had a vote.
Right.
But at that time, there was no state legislation to allow it.
No.
You just did it anyway.
We did it anyway.
And then Wayne Johnson comes in,
Yeah, and he liked it.
and he was helpful. He saw how this could be helpful, right?
Right.
And you guys knew Wayne Johnson for a period of time
Sure.
also, huh? And he was a reasonable guy.
Yeah.
He was actually an educator,
Right.
Not a
Good
hack.
educator.
not like we have now.
No.
And how about the Board of Education at that time? Were they pretty reasonable?
No.
So was the superintendent was reasonable arguing with the board over these programs?
Right.
So the board was trying to stop the union,
Right.
but the superintendent knew that he needed you with him.
Right.
So that's why you guys had to go into the street in that period of time in 1970?
That's why we went into the street.
Now tell the public how the cops scooped you guys up off the street and for what reason.
Well, the cops.
And this was LAPD, not LA Unified Police.
Right.
And by the way, you're the founder of the LA Unified Police and the first full-time school police department in the U.S., aren't you?
I am.
I want everybody to really understand this, okay? Okay, so you guys have the vote and get the union. Wayne Johnson comes in and is with you, so that stops anybody from knocking you out, right?
Right.
And then think your old office is the old boardroom at this time for the gang program.
Right.
The old board office where the new school is, correct?
Right.
And one day you get a call from Marcus Foster, the new superintendent of Oakland. And tell us what that phone call's about. One day you're sitting in your office and ding-a-ling-a-ling, right?
Right. He asked me to come up to his office in Oakland
The next day,
the
right?
next day. And he wanted to discuss with me my being the new superintendent of the Oakland School District. His job was just working with superintendents. He didn't run schools. He wanted me to be the key person running the schools in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Working with the teachers, especially the teachers union. Mm-hmm. And helping
So
them.
Oakland at this time had voted in a teachers union also.
Right,
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody understands that.
yeah,
Okay, so you guys had a negotiation, if I remember correctly, right?
right,
And you told him some basics that you needed to come and do the job.
Right.
So tell the public what you told him, Marcus Foster, that you needed in order to do this job right. Tell him a few simple things that you said that you needed.
I need a few simple things and some very complicated but good things. I needed access to funds and programs to put into my school. I needed to be able to contact the key people among the parents. So I started a program called Food for Parents.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents came to
There
school.
was a lot of poverty and hunger.
A lot of poverty.
Okay, let's go to how that point came. When you first took over Castlemont High School, you got everybody out there and told them, you can come to me at any time and this violence is going to stop, right?
Right.
And then what was it, someplace within 2 weeks, a kid comes to you in the hall? Tell the public what happens with this.
Well, he comes to me in the hall and he says, you can't do too much to help us unless you do something about the food situation. And I said, well, what do you suggest? And he said, well, you need a new breakfast program that includes all students.
This was a student. This was a student.
This was a student.
And he told you, if I remember correctly, that a huge amount of the students weren't fed any food over the weekends,
They
right?
didn't have any food over the weekend.
Their parents didn't give them nothing?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Breakfast program was the only food they got. And they really appreciated it.
Well, you got that through Huey Newton and the Black Panthers, didn't you?
Right.
So the kid comes to you, and you called Huey up, didn't you?
I did.
And tell the public what happened with Huey.
Well, he liked it.
This is back when the Black Panthers were promoting kids' breakfast, correct?
Right. They weren't considered the best people at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But this program gave them some success because they got credit for doing some good things with this program.
And that really changed your school, didn't it?
That changed everything.
And then you put in one of the very first parent centers, didn't you?
I put in the first parent center.
The first parent center, okay? So you not only started the first full-time school police, you started the first parents program in which if they had financial problems, you get them financial help to get out of trouble.
Right.
If they had psychological problems in their family, you go get them help.
Right.
If they needed them food, you'd hook them up with food so they didn't starve, right?
Right.
And the other thing I want the public to know about, and I want you public to remember, this is 1970. Richard had a button in every classroom for every teacher. If that teacher pressed the button, staff was there in how long, Richard?
The police could be there in less than 2
Just
minutes.
staff before you pressed your button.
Oh, the staff was there immediately.
2 minutes, right?
Less than 2 minutes.
Okay. 1970, people, and you had a button. If you pressed that button, what happened?
everyone jumped.
Like police units were there within 3 to 5 minutes, right? Multiple units.
Right. If I
Okay.
press my button.
Now, from what you told me, I asked you, when you started the thing with the staff backing the teachers up when the class went crazy, tell the public how long it took until it all stopped.
What do you mean it all stopped?
They stopped messing in class because they knew they couldn't get away
Oh,
with it.
yeah. That happened so subtly, it just worked well.
Because they knew they couldn't get away with it, right?
They knew they couldn't
In less
get
than a
away.
week, it just stopped.
In less than a week.
Okay, now I want to go a little deeper into, because we didn't really get into this. We're going to go back to the founding of UTLA. Now let's go back to the real reasons UTLA was founded, and it wasn't just for teachers' salaries, was it?
No, we didn't.
Let's go into the rest of this, because the union, right now, everybody in that union doesn't have a clue to who they are, where they came from.
We did not emphasize teachers' salaries. We emphasize teachers having a say over what goes on in their classrooms. We had to change that. We had to change a terrible system and move it in the right direction so that the teachers and students could do their thing and be successful.
So it wasn't, well, it really got going, a lot of it, because of teachers having no protection in the classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having no say-so over what happened in the classroom,
No.
what they taught, or anything,
Or
right?
anything.
And you guys know that you're the ones that are in there doing it, not these other guys.
Right.
So it was not just for teachers' pay or benefits. And if I remember correctly, they have health insurance and annuities because of you, isn't it?
Right. Definitely.
So I want you teachers to remember this, how this all happened, okay? Let's not forget, like the lady that's sitting here listening to this, I know she remembers civil rights, doesn't she? Don't you, my friend? And you remember segregation, don't you, like Marguerite Lamont and George McKenna talking about growing up in the segregated New Orleans. Okay, so we're talking about the end of this mess, right?
Right.
Now my question is, how we come back to a bigger mess than you had then? With a union, which is why we're interviewing you, Richard, because these people don't know who they are. And that's a major problem.
Yeah, they have to know who they are. They have to know how.
Because you guys formed it for pay, benefits, for students, for society, and the taxpayers, right?
They have to know how important they are to the classroom and to a system where people listen to teachers and what teachers need to do their work.
Because who's there with the students, right?
They're there with the students, and they're the most important people, not administrators. Administrators are not important to what goes on in classrooms.
They're important only to feed the teacher as support staff.
Right.
Because the real game goes on with that teacher, with each one of these individual kids. And what I try to tell people is, say a teacher goes through 150 kids a day with 5 classes, 30 in a class, right?
Right.
Each one of those kids is not a clone of the other one. So every day you got 150 different things you have to deal with, people who have different needs. It's kind of complicated. And like now, the way they're locking teachers in a box where you can't vary one word or anything, isn't this originally what you guys fought against?
Yeah, definitely we fought against it. Teachers are still fighting. I talked to teachers today that are still fighting.
But they're pretty unorganized,
They're
and
unorganized.
they don't have a clue what's going on as
No,
far
they
as I'm
don't.
concerned.
They don't know how to do it. And I'm not out there helping them like I used to be.
Let's tell the public what used to happen when we used to go down to the board And you are a major domo at LA Unified and a major domo in education nationally known, right?
That's
You used to
right.
be flown all over the country on this, including to the White House, right?
Right.
And you go down there and offer your help for free with no money and tell the public what they used to tell you for years.
They used to tell me that they couldn't use my services.
They'd tell you to go to hell, wouldn't they?
Yeah, in a nice way.
Well, I didn't see it as a nice way because I saw through what they were doing. They might not scream at you,
No.
but they basically flipped you off.
Right.
Because these fools would rather pay their buddies, consultants, tens of millions of dollars who've never done a thing in their life.
Right.
Because when I tell people about the schools you've turned around, they're blown away. Let's tell them about, okay, the SLA comes in and they assassinate Marcus Foster and they try to assassinate you twice, right?
Right.
And we want you public to know, they were so serious about Marcus Foster that they drilled every bullet and loaded it with cyanide with a gun for Marcus Foster, because they had one gun for you with regular bullets, and they had another gun for Marcus Foster with the cyanide bullets, didn't they?
They sure did.
And I think they hit Marcus 7 times, didn't they?
They hit him 7 times.
And the reason they didn't hit you is the one night you parked in the back parking lot.
Right.
So your friend got shot,
Right.
and luckily he lived.
That's right.
And then 2 weeks later, you're driving to school and they try it again.
They tried it again.
So you moved back to LA, right? Because you got a wife and kids.
I moved back to
You
LA.
can't have your wife and kids getting blown away by a bunch of crazies
I got a job in Cerritos,
at the ABC school district.
ABC School District.
And tell us about the formation of one of the highest performing public high schools ever in the United States.
That's when I went to work to.
This is Whitney High School, people.
That's when I went to work to form Whitney High School in Cerritos.
What did you want to prove with that one?
I wanted to prove that by getting the best elementary students there and by improving Whitney into a good campus with the students getting the best opportunity to learn. And it worked. It worked beautifully.
Let me tell you, public, of 1,000 possible points, Whitney is at 998. Only 2 schools in the state of California beat Whitney. They're both ultra exclusive private boys schools in Oakland the last time I looked. With unlimited amount of money and no capability of any problem student at all being near the place, right? Now, they didn't just take anybody at Whitney, you had to work for it, right?
That's right. And you had to work to stay there.
Right. You couldn't just